The Savoia-Marchetti SM.79 Sparviero was a three-engined Italian medium bomber with a wood and metal structure. Originally designed as a fast passenger aircraft, this low-wing monoplane, between 1937 and 1939, set 26 world records that qualified it for some time as the fastest medium bomber in the world. It first saw action during the Spanish Civil War and flew on all fronts in which Italy was involved during World War II. It became famous and achieved many successes as a torpedo bomber in the Mediterranean theater. The M79 was an outstanding aircraft and was certainly the best-known Italian aeroplane of World War II. It was easily recognizable due to its distinctive fuselage dorsal hump, and was well liked by its crews who nicknamed it Il Gobbo Maledetto. It was the most widely produced Italian bomber of World War II, with some 1,300 built, remaining in Italian service until 1952. Development. The M79 Project began in 1934 and was conceived as a fast, 8-passenger transport capable of being used in air racing. Piloted by Adriano Bacula, the prototype flew for the first time on 28 September 1934. Originally planned to use the 597 kW Isotta Fucini Associeri as power plant, the aircraft reverted to the less powerful 440 kW Piaggio P. 40 Stella, a license-produced Bristol Jupiter on which many Piaggio engines were based. The engines were subsequently replaced by Alfa Romeo 125 RC 35s. The prototype was completed too late to enter the London-Melbourne race, but flew from Milan to Rome in just 1 hour and 10 minutes, at an average speed of 410 km/h. Soon after, on 2 August 1935, the prototype set a record by flying from Rome to Massaua in Italian Eritrea in 12 flying hours. The M79 was by far the most important Italian offensive warplane of World War II, and one of the very few Italian aircraft to be produced in substantial quantities. Production started in October 1936 and continued until June 1943, totaling 1,217 machines. Some were constructed by Aeronautica Umbra Foligno, makers of the AUT-18. Design and performance. The M79 was a cantilever low-wing monoplane trimotor, with a retractable tail dragger undercarriage. The fuselage was made of a welded tubular steel frame and covered with duralumin in the forward section, duraluminum plywood on the upper fuselage surface, and fabric on all other surfaces. The wings were of all-wood construction, with trailing edge flaps and leading edge slats to offset the relatively small size. The internal structure was made of 3 spruce and plywood spars linked with plywood ribs with a skin of plywood. The wing had a dihedral of 2 degrees 15. Ailerons were capable of rotating through +13, -26 degrees, and were used together with the flaps in low-speed flight and in takeoff. The aircraft's capabilities were significantly greater than its predecessor, the M75, with over 1,715 kilowatts available and a high wing loading that gave it characteristics not dissimilar to a large fighter. The engines fitted to the main bomber version were 3 582 kilowatts Alfa Romeo 126 RC 34 radials, equipped with variable pitch, all-metal 3-bladed propellers. Speeds attained were around 430 km per hour at 4,250 meters, with a relatively low practical ceiling of 6,500 meters. Cruise speed was 373 km per hour at 5,000 meters, but the best cruise speed was 259 km per hour. The landing was characterized by a 200 km per hour final approach with the slats extended, slowing to 145 km per hour with extension of flaps, and finally the run over the field with only 200 meters needed to land. With full power available and flaps set for takeoff, the M79 could be airborne within 300 meters, then climb to 1,000 meters in 3 minutes, 2,000 meters in 6 minutes 30 seconds, 3,000 meters in 9 minutes 34 seconds, 4,000 meters in 13 minutes 2 seconds, 5,000 meters in 17 minutes 43 seconds. The bomber version had 10 fuel tanks. Endurance at full load averaging 360 km per hour was 4 hours 30 minutes. The maximum ferry range, at best cruise speed, was unconfirmed. In order to reach Addis Ababa with non-stop flights from Libya, aircraft specially modified to carry more fuel were able to fly over 2,000 kilometers. The range with 1,000 kilograms payload was around 800 to 900 kilometers. It had a crew of 5 or 6 in the bomber version, with cockpit accommodation for 2 pilots, sitting side by side. Instrumentation in the central panel included oil and fuel gauges, altimeters for low and high altitude, clock, airspeed and vertical speed indicator, gyroscope, compass, artificial horizon, turn and bank indicator, rev counters and throttles. The M79 was a good performer, its wooden structure being light enough to allow it to stay afloat for up to half an hour in case of water landing, giving the crew ample time to escape, and the front engine giving some protection against anti-aircraft fire. It was also capable of a relatively quick climb, had a good turn of speed for its time, and its rugged structure and responsiveness allowed the aircraft be looped. Effective torpedo bombing range was between 500 and 1,000 meters from the target. M79s often flew at low level above the ships before the aerial torpedo was launched, and so were targeted by every weapon available, from infantry small arms to heavy artillery. The Sparviero had several advantages compared to British torpedo bombers, including a higher top speed and greater range. Soon, however, the Sparviero faced the Hawker Hurricane and the Fairey Fulmar, which was faster but still quite slow in relation to other escort fighters. Bristol Beaufighters were fast and well armed, and as well as being effective long-range day fighters, were successful night interceptors and late in the war often chased Sparvieros in night missions. Curtiss P-40s, Lockheed P-38 Lightnings, Grumman Martlets and Supermarine Spitfires served in the Mediterranean to hinder Sparviero operations during the day. Armament. The M79's defensive armament consisted of 4 and later 5 breeder SAF-80 machine guns. 3 were 12.7 mm guns, 2 of which were in the dorsal hump, with the forward one fixed at an elevation of 15 degrees, and the other maneuverable with 60 degrees pivotal movement in the horizontal, and 0 to 70 degrees in the vertical plane. The third 12.7 mm machine gun was located ventrally. Each gun except for the forward one was equipped with 500 rounds. There was also a 7.7mm Lewis gun in one of a pair of waist mounts, not unlike what the B-17 Flying Fortress possessed, on a mount that allowed rapid change of side of the weapon. This Lewis gun was later replaced by two 7.7mm Bredas in the waist mounts, which were more reliable and faster firing, even though there was only sufficient room in the fuselage for one man to operate them. Despite the low overall hitting power, it was heavily armed by 1930s standards, the armament being more than a match for the fighter aircraft of the time, which were not usually fitted with any armor. By World War II, however, the Sparviero's vulnerability to new fighters was significant, and it lost its reputation of invulnerability that had been gained over Spain. No turrets were ever fitted to M79s, limiting its field of defensive fire. Of all its weapons, the dorsal one was the most important. With the shift to low-level attacks, the Sparviero was attacked almost exclusively from the rear and above. The cramped layout of the ventral gondola, with the bomb-aiming instruments located in front and the rearwards aimed ventral defensive machine gun in the rear, made it impossible to perform both bomb-aiming and rear defense simultaneously, so its usefulness was compromised. Because of this, in the later versions which were used exclusively for torpedo bombing tasks, the ventral weapon and nacelle were removed. The fixed forward breeder, more suited to offensive tasks and aimed by the pilot, was seldom used defensively, and was often removed or replaced with a smaller caliber gun, a mock-up, with an associated gain in speed and range due to the reduction in weight. The rear ventral gondola on the Sparviero was somewhat similar to the almost identically located Bowler emplacement on the Heinkel He-111 German medium bomber, which was only used as a ventral defensive armament mount on the German aircraft. Defensive weapons in the rear gondola and the rear hump were protected by aerodynamic shields intended to only be opened in case of attack. However, an enemy aircraft could attack the Sparviero unseen, so the defensive positions were usually left open even though this reduced maximum effective speed. As with the Luftwaffe's He-111, the Sparviero's bomb bay was configured to carry bombs vertically, preventing large bombs from being accommodated internally. The aircraft could hold two 500 kg, 5 250 kg, 12,150 kg bombs, or hundreds of bomblets. The Bombardier, with an 85 degrees forward field of view, had a JOZZA-2 aiming system and a series of bomb release mechanisms. The machine gun to the rear of the gondola prevented the Bombardier from lying in a prone position, and as a result, the Bombardier was provided with retractable structures to support his legs while seated. From 1939 onwards, torpedoes were carried externally, as were larger bombs, with two hard points fitted under the inner wing. Theoretically, two torpedoes could be carried, but the performance and the maneuverability of the aircraft were so reduced that usually only one was carried. The M79's overall payload of 3,800 kg precluded carrying 1,600 to 1,860 kg of bombs without a noticeable reduction of the fuel load when full. The standard torpedo, a 1938 Whitehead design, had a weight of 876 kg, length of 5.46 meters and a 170 kg warhead. It had a 3 km range at 74 km per hour and could be launched from a wide range of speeds and altitudes, 40 to 120 meters and up to 300 km per hour maximum. It took over 10 years to develop effective torpedo bombing techniques. Consequently, with the failure of the M84 and the lack of power of the California 314, only Only the M79 continued to serve as a torpedo bomber until 1944, despite trials with many types of aircraft, including the Fiat G55's operational history. Record-setting aircraft. Despite Italy's failure to win the Schneider Trophy, support for aeronautical feats continued as part of Benito Mussolini's propaganda campaign to promote fascist Italy, and following two initial successes, further Sparvieros were modified to set speed records. The M79 prototype Imago was modified to carry 6,100 kilograms of bombs internally, enabling it to attempt records while carrying a payload, and on the 23rd of September 1935 flew for 2,000 kilometers with a 2,000 kilograms load at an average speed of 389.61 kilometers per hour, breaking 6 world records. As on the prototype, the hump was not fitted to some of the first production aircraft, these being transformed into performance aircraft known as the M79 CS. One of them set further records in 1937, with 3 Piaggio PC-RC-40 engines. It averaged 423.618 km per hour over 1,000 km with a 2,000 kg payload. The record then improved to 444.115 km per hour, while another M79 achieved 428.296 km per hour in the 2,000 km, 2,000 kg category. Unofficially, a speed of 472 km per hour was later achieved in the same category. 5 M79 CSs went on to enter the Paris-Damascus Istra race, where ICUPA, IFILU and IBIMU took the first 3 positions, while the other 2 were placed 6th and 7th. The latter was heavily damaged in Damascus. 2 Fiat Bridge 20s also competed, but achieved only a joint 6th and an 8th place. 3 of the M79 CSs were modified to cross the Atlantic Ocean and reach Brazil. They took off on the 24th of January 1938 and landed in Dakar 11 hours later, then headed for Rio de Janeiro, arriving at 22:45 local time on the 25th of January. One faulty aircraft, however, landed at Natal, where it remained and was later donated to the Brazilian Air Force. Spanish Civil War. The M79 saw action for the first time when serving with the Aviazione Legionaria, an Italian unit sent to assist Franco's nationalist forces during the Spanish Civil War. The Sparviero started its operational service at the end of 1936 when 8 degrees Storm OB-T, with Group E 27 degree and 28 degree, under the command of Tenente Colonnello Ricardo Seidel, was sent to Spain. Deployed to the Balearic Islands, the unit was named Falci del Baleari, and operated over Catalonia and the main cities of western Spain, attacking the Second Spanish Republic, killing 2,700 civilians and injuring more than 7,000. During the 3 years of the civil conflict, over 100 M79s served as bombers for the Aviazione Legionaria and only 4 were lost in combat. Due to the experience gained in Spain, the M79, introduced in October 1939, went on to form the backbone of the Italian bomber corps during World War II. Yugoslavia. Favorable reports of reliability and performance during the Spanish Civil War led to the 1938 Kingdom of Yugoslavia's order of 45 aircraft, generally similar to the M79I variant, designated the 79K. They were delivered to Yugoslavia in 1939, but most were destroyed during the 1941 Axis invasion by the Curzon by advancing Axis forces. During several sorties against German and Italian forces, they managed some success in Kaikanik Gorge. Some of these aircraft escaped to Greece carrying King Peter Karageorgievich and his entourage. A few survived, one to be pressed into service with the pro-Axis forces of the NDH, and four which became AX-702, AX-705 in the RAF. Romania in 1937, the Bucharest government ordered 24 twin-engined M79B bombers fitted with 746 kilowatts Nomron Mistral Major 14K radial engines. These aircraft, however, proved to be underpowered. Consequently, in February 1940, Romania ordered from Italy 8 machines equipped with 2 Junkers Jumo 211 inline engines of 1,200 horsepower each. These aircraft were designated JIS-79 and were delivered in 1941–2. A further 72 M79s were built under license by the Industria Aeronautica Romana and designated JRS-79B. Another version was the JRS-79B1, armed with a 20mm Zakaria cannon and with an enlarged cockpit for a 5th crew member. Due to its role in low-level attacks, it suffered heavy losses. Brazil and Iraq twin-engined versions were sold to Brazil. Alfa Romeo 128 RC, 18 engines, and Iraq Fiat 80 RC, 14 engines. Regia Aeronautica almost 600 M79 and 2 aircraft were in service when Italy entered World War II, and these aircraft were deployed in every theatre of war in which the Italians fought. The 12 degrees Stormo was the first to be equipped with the M79, starting in early 1936. 12 Wing was involved in the initial evaluation of the bomber, which continued throughout 1936. The wing went operational on 1 May 1936 with the M79 successfully completing torpedo launches from a target distance of 5 kilometers in August 1936. The torpedo bomber variant was much more unstable and harder to control than the civilian version. Its capabilities were still being explored when the Spanish Civil War broke out, and a number of M79s were dispatched to support the nationalists. By the 4th of November 1936, there were only 6 M79s with enough crew to fly them operating in Spain. At the beginning of 1937, there were 15 M79s in total, and they went on to be used in Spain throughout the conflict, with very few losses. Around 19 of the total sent there were lost. Deliveries to 12 Wing and other units involved numbered at least 99 aircraft. The first recorded interception of an M79 formation took place on the 11th of October 1937 when 3 aircraft were attacked by 12 Polikarpov I-16s. One of the M79s was damaged, but its defensive armament prevented close-up attacks. All bombers returned to base, although one had been hit by 27 bullets, many hitting the fuel tanks. Other interceptions occurred in the conflict without any M79s being lost. Combat experience revealed some deficiencies in the M79, the lack of oxygen masks for high-altitude operation, instability, vibrations experienced at speeds over 400 km/h, and other problems were encountered and sometimes solved. General Vail, in an attempt to answer some of the criticisms about the ability of the aircraft to operate at night, took off from Guidonia and bombed Barcelona, a journey of 6 hours and 15 minutes. On this occasion the aircraft proved it had a useful range bombs, for a total gross weight of around 1,000 kilograms. M79s operated from the Balearic Islands and later from mainland Spain. Hundreds of missions were performed in a wide range of roles against Republican targets. No Fiat CR-32s were needed to escort the M79s, partly because the biplane fighters were too slow. After serving in the Spanish Civil War, the Sparviero came into use with 111 degrees and 8 degrees wing. By the end of 1939, there were 388 Sparvieros in service, with 11 wings partially or totally made up of this aircraft. They also participated in the occupation of Albania in autumn 1939. By the beginning of World War II, 612 aircraft had been delivered, making the Sparviero the most numerous bomber in the whole of the Regia Aeronautica, assigned to a total of 14 wings. Not all of these wings had Group E entirely equipped with the M79. Every squadron had around 9 to 10 aircraft, but this included second-line aircraft, so the force of each squadron consisted on average of around 7 to 8 bombers, and every wing had around 30 bombers. Among these units, 8, 9, 11, 12, 30, 32, 36, 41 and 46 Stormy were based in Italy and participated in the Battle of France. They were equipped with a total of around 350 M79s, including those used in training squadrons. Malta. It was on the fortress island at the center of the Mediterranean in June 1940 that the M79s started to lose the reputation of invulnerability, when Gloucester Gladiators and Hawker Hurricanes were encountered. The first of many Sparvieros shot down over Malta fell on the 22nd of June. That day a reconnaissance mission Sparviero M.22068 of 216A Squadriglia piloted by Tenente Francesco Solimene took off at 18.15 to check the intended bombing targets on the island. 2 Gladiators were scrambled, one piloted by FLT-LT George Burgess. Overslyer and Valletta Burgess attacked the Sparviero from superior height, shooting off the port engine. The M79 caught fire and crashed in the sea off Calafrana. The pilot, Solimene, and 1 degree aviator Armetta Risi were rescued from the sea, but the other 4 crew members were lost. A Sparviero was the first plane to fall on Maltese soil in World War II. On the 10th of July 1940, an estimated 28 M79s without escort arrived to bomb the dockyard, Manoel Island, Tarxian and Abba. They were attacked by Gloucester Gladiators and the bomber piloted by Sottotenente Felice Filippi from 195A Squadriglia, 90 degrees Group O. 30 degrees Stormo Bombardamento Terrestre came down in flames just behind the Night's Watchtower east of Fort San Leonardo. The air victory was credited to Flying Officer Frederick Taylor. At least one Italian bailed out with his parachute on fire but did not survive. Other war theaters. A small number operated in Ethiopia. On the western side of Italian East Africa was 44 degrees Group O, based at Dawa, consisting of the 6A and 7A Squadriglia, with 12 Savoia-Marchetti M79s each. Italy also had 6 M79s as part of the reserve forces, but 2 of them were under repair. The Sparviero was the only type present that had not participated in the Second Italo-Abyssinian War. The M79s of Italian East Africa first saw action on the 13th of June 1940. That day, 9 Savoia-Marchetti of 44 degrees Gruppo based on Diadawa took off to attack Aden. The M79 flown by Sottotenente Ruffini was hit by anti-aircraft fire from a British warship and crashed. Then, 2 Gloucester Gladiators intercepted the remaining bombers. Pilot Officer Stevenson's Gladiator attacked the Sparviero of Capitano Serafini, damaged by anti-aircraft fire, but the Gladiator was hit by the M79's dorsal gunner, forcing it to crash land. Serafini managed to land at Assab, but his aircraft was a write-off. Another Savoia-Marchetti was damaged but landed at the same base. These few aircraft were later reinforced by others which were modified to fly at an economical speed over Sudan for the hazardous ferry flight of over 2,000 kilometers. They could not, however, do much to help Italian forces in Ethiopia, which were forced to surrender in spring 1941. The same period saw the 5 Iraqi M79Bs and the 45 M79 kiloseconds in Yugoslavian service unable to mount a successful defense in both Iraq and Yugoslavia. During the North African campaign, around 100 M79s served in 10, 14, 15 and 30 wings, bombing mainly non-strategic targets in the desert. The British offensive in December hit the Regia Aeronautica hard and many wings were phased out because of losses. The losses caused by hurricanes and ground fire increased, so at the beginning of 1941 only around 40 M79s were still present in Libya, and by the end of 1941 only one operational squadron remained. In the Second Battle of El Alamein, many Sparvieros were used for defensive tasks, such as countering Shash teams in the desert, and in anti-ship roles. From autumn 1940, M79s were used against the Kingdom of Greece, then Yugoslavia. They continued to be hampered in their operations by the Royal Air Force, but also by poor weather conditions. Over the Mediterranean, the Sparvieros were used in reconnaissance missions and anti-ship attacks.